so happy to have Rachel Beech, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Success for Miami University of America. And let's lean into that just for a minute because I think ESPN has kind of tagged that name for y'all based on your undefeated basketball team. Do you want to start out there and kind of expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been kind of a fun start to the spring here at Miami. We have had the fortune of having our men's basketball program have the best start in the MAC ever. We're currently sitting at a record of 29-0. We have two games to close out the season. It's ramping up the stress for those of us in the enrollment landscape here on campus, but we're having a really good time watching them. They're having an amazing experience as students and athletes, and we're just really lucky that we're in this moment. And it's been kind of fun to get to play on people don't know who we are. They confuse us with Florida all the time. It's nice to kind of have this moment in the spotlight for all the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. You've kind of been able to, separate yourself. And then talk a little bit about how that's impacted enrollment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Cinderella effect, that storyline, is one of those things that actually has a real impact. We're seeing increases in our confirmations for our fall 26 incoming class, which is really exciting. We're seeing those increases coming not just from students in Ohio, but kind of across the country. I think a lot of whom are getting to know us better because of the basketball program, right? The amount of attention, but not just on the program, on the university, on the students, on the experience that those students are having when they're in the crowd at the games, is really helping us in the moment. It's always a nice lift to get some of that national media on a real regular basis.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. Well, let's start a little bit with you and your personal journey. Can you talk to us about who were the mentors that helped shape your personal and professional path?
Yeah, it's a great question. As I think about my mentors, I've had a few over the course of my career that really kind of launched me into the field. One of them was Peg Davey at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. When I was an undergrad, I had the fortune of working for her in the admission office and really kind of helping me see that this was a career path. I was one of those students who wasn't really sure what they were going to do when they graduated. I had really helpful degrees in history and anthropology, so I knew how to think, I knew how to talk, I knew how to write, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And that job kind of turned into a lived experience, right? It got me an understanding that there was a whole profession in admissions, and I've been very lucky kind of since then. My career's detoured a little bit all over the place. I've been an advisor. I was doing student engagement programming. I've run orientation, but I've been lucky to have supervisors and managers who said, let's give you another project. Let's take this on. I had the fortune of working for Casey Urquidez at the University of Arizona. And I remember the day she walked into my office and said, "Hey, I know you've never done international admissions before, but you're a very strong leader, and I'd love to see you take this on as a challenge. We need to move in a different direction in our international space." And that was kind of the left turn into the true kind of enrollment work that I took. But it is a series of folks. It's Casey, it's Keith Humphrey, who's right now at University of Northern Colorado, all of whom said, "I want to give you one more challenge. I want you to try something different, try something new, and see how you do," and really kind of support me through that process. And it's something I try to then emulate in my own work with my teams and the leadership that I work with, is to say, how do we take one more thing and how do I support you in growing into that skill set?
Well, I think taking you back to University of Wisconsin-Madison,
Mhm.
so you started out as an orientation leader, right?
Yep.
And it
Yeah.
sounds to me like that's where you kind of caught the bug, so to speak, right? And then
Yes. Yeah,
you
for
kind of
sure.
got that sense of, well, how do I do this for real?
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
was that moment like when you realized, hey, I really like working with students?
Yeah, it's funny. I go back to that experience, and what I think about most was watching folks have the moment, right? There's a moment in every student where they transition from their previous identity into their new identity. And that for me has been the driving force. So at orientation, you often see it, right? I could see the incoming first year students, the incoming transfer students become badgers in that moment when they're learning the fight song or they're having some sort of experience where they get their first taste of Babcock ice cream. I do think it's fairly easy at my alma mater to fall in love with that space, but I really think there's a magic to that moment, and it served me all the way through my career. It doesn't matter where I've worked, whether how deeply connected I am to the space, right? I take Arizona as a really good example. I'm a Arizona State alumni, so in a lot of ways that wouldn't have been a natural fit for me. But I could see that moment, watching students fall in love with the place that they were going to spend their next 4 years, that they were going to be able to proudly call themselves an alumni of that institution. That magic moment has been my driver. And so as I've progressed in my career, I think about it more as how do I create conditions to allow for that to happen in as seamless a way as possible. Really good enrollment fades into the background, right? The perfect experience for a student is when they apply, are admitted, get their aid package, are able to enroll without any hurdles, and don't really need to call my team. That's to me kind of the perfect moment, but all of that takes a ton of hard work to have everything structured and systematized in a way that is allows for that kind of student success.
Yeah, and so let's talk a little bit about your amazing retention and graduation rates at Miami University of America. Um, let's talk a little bit about that because, I know especially as an incoming freshman, there's, I imagine, I know my experience, there's a lot of nerves, there's a
Yeah.
lot of uncertainty. So what are those tools that you implement to really make sure that students feel at home, feel welcome, and persist? And again, you all have done it really well. So how
Yeah.
have you done it?
So I'm going to acknowledge we're extraordinarily lucky. We get students who want to be in our space choosing to come to Miami, right? We are definitely a first choice option for many folks. Our students come in with extraordinarily high grade point averages, good study skills. A lot of them are coming in with previous credit. In fact, for students who bring in credit, the average number of units is almost 20 that they're bringing to Miami in that first semester. So they've experienced some of those academic challenges of college level coursework prior to coming across our threshold, if you will. But I do think it is about the community we create. We are a public university. We're relatively large at about 20,000 students. But what we really do is focus on community. If you ever have the opportunity to come to Oxford, you'll see that our campus is built across a series of quads. We have a 2 year live on requirement. We have students in these communities and engaging with one another really from day one. They're smaller buildings. They have only a certain number of rooms per floor. Very, very intentional creation of community in those conditions, right? It's really one of these spaces that draws that in. We put students in a first year success course so that they are taking again a common experiences, learning about the tools of the trade. But we do it through also a series of strategic interventions. We're a Navigate 360 school, so we use that as our way of getting our early alerts from our faculty members. But we do them not just when students are in academic difficulty, but when they're also thriving and succeeding in the classroom. Those kudos, those congratulations, you're doing well, are having a very positive impact. In fact, as much of an impact as the warnings in terms of success at the end of the term. So we're really focusing on not just, hey, we need to intervene because something's going wrong, but hey, we want to intervene because something's going right. We want to say you've done a great job, you're kicking off on the right foot, and we want to honor and celebrate that. And I think for some of our students, as we've been looking at this, we're seeing higher retention for those who both got a negative and a positive than those who just got negatives. And what that to me speaks to is that they see that thread of care. They're seeing it in their residence halls, they're seeing it across their faculty. So even though they might be struggling in one space, they also know somebody else is saying, hey, but you're doing really well over here, and I want to acknowledge and recognize that for students. So a lot of very intentional work going in. We do a lot of interventions early. We try and put those alerts and the advisors in front of the first year students, really at the end of about week 4 or 5, so well before they have to register for the next semester, so we can get ahead of any challenges that we have. Our faculty have aligned with us in that work by offering sprint classes. So we do these courses where if a student isn't doing particularly well, we can do a swap within the semester so that they can change that course, remove themselves from the environment that they're struggling through, and say, hey, let's get you the right resources. Let's get you into something else that you're going to succeed in and come back once we figure out a strategy for you. So it's a lot of that kind of focused work that happens within the student success team here at Miami, and couple that with a really strong relationship with what's going on in our student life side, getting students involved in organizations that are campus driven before they can get themselves involved in the recruitment process for our Greek system here at Miami. It's a lot of these very intentional choices we've made over the creation of the culture of the institution that I think allows us to really see that strength both in the first year retention rate, but also in our graduation rates.
Absolutely, I love that, and I love that you're patting those students on the back that are doing a good job,
Yeah.
right? It's not you're always trying to help those students that might be struggling to get it back on the right path. But I think that all-encompassing effort, again,
Yeah.
for everybody, I think is unique.
Yeah, I think we in higher ed have thought so much about the deficit side of the equation. We forgot to think about the benefit sides, right? We really should be telling students, you're doing a great job, stick with it, because sometimes that's the message they need to hear in the moment, because they may not feel it or see it, right? They might be in the middle of writing that paper and feeling at a total loss that they can't get their topics down and their research is going haywire and whatever that looks like for them. But what they then get is this positive note that says, "Hey, just a heads up, you're doing awesome. Let's keep you going. Let's keep you focused." It can really make the difference kind of as they're thinking about how they're succeeding both in the classroom and kind of socially as well.
Yeah. So you had mentioned writing. You had
Yeah.
mentioned that, the importance of writing.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how impactful writing can be in the business world? And then can you also
Yeah.
tie that into AI and how that's being
Yeah.
used or should be used?
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. I feel like we have this conversation fairly regularly here at Miami around kind of what's going on. We have a strength in undergraduate writing. We're a top-ranked undergraduate writing institution, really preparing our students for that depth of composition. And I mean that kind of beyond the actual physical tools of writing, but also in kind of how they think. We have talked a lot about the impact of AI on the curriculum. We're looking at it from a perspective of it's important for us to help students understand how AI shows up in their discipline, right? So if they're a supply chain student, what does that look like? But if they're a philosophy student, what does that look like? How do you kind of engage it and work across those? But one of the things that is really present in the curriculum that we offer is this idea around durable skill development. So I think people like to call them soft skills. I think we think about them more as human skills, right? Those durable skills you need in business. Being able to write and interpret and be able to think through what you're looking at is such a critical skill, but it's coupled with the public speaking components, the ability to do that critical thinking, to look at the sources and make a difference. And that's really how our writing shows up throughout the curriculum. Whether it's in first year writing or our senior seminar, this focus on being able to take text and make something new from it, to be able to interpret and understand, keeps those human skills really close to the forefront. And I think then helps our students to succeed when they get out into the workforce. We have about a 99% first year destination survey placement rate, which is not a bad stat to have in a moment where the economy is shifting. But even in our computer sciences department, right, they talk about how are people using these tools to be able to advance whatever it is on their agenda. And I think that the ethical use of AI, that idea of thinking about it as a people skill rather than thinking about it as a productivity skill, it really makes Miami unique in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. So let's talk about career readiness.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that students are career ready
Mhm.
and you're helping them, you're helping align them with jobs that are in place now, but also in the future that may not even be here right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the portfolio I get to work with at Miami because I get to see students from first postcard to first job offer. So we really work from admissions to careers all in the EMSS portfolio. And I think what's really interesting about that is how we think about career as an ROI lens when we're bringing students in at the front door, right? We're talking about how does a Miami education lead to these outcomes? And we're one of the top 10 producers of Fortune 500 CEOs. Uh, Purina, Starbucks, Enterprise, those are all folks who are Miami alumni who are in those top chairs in those organizations. And really, I think as we think about then how do we talk about career, it's not just, hey, the CEO of Starbucks is one of our alum. It's here are the things that he has told us he's learned from a Miami education, how to socialize, how to engage with others, how to lead and make hard decisions in a moment. And we start to infuse that across the curriculum. So students at orientation get to do a little bit of that career surveying, starting to understand what their outcomes are. So what are the career clusters that they're looking to go into? It's embedded into the university success class in the first semester. We actually, with our exploratory students, even start to talk about how do you take anything to achieve your goals And so really kind of framing it as a 4-year experience, that career isn't something you do in your junior and senior year, that you start to think about what it is you're hoping for the outcomes at day one. And really, I think for so many of our students, that's the motivator that keeps them going, right? We have huge and great rates of graduate school placements. Our first time applications to medical school acceptance rate is about 10 percentage points above the national average. So we're preparing scholars who are going on with research into these spaces and those professional degrees, but we still know that the vast majority of our students are going straight into a job. And so we are preparing them to be employees and leaders in those spaces, right? We often say we take leaders, we make leaders at Miami. And so we help them hone the skills that they're already inherently thinking through and engaged with, whether it was being the captain of their football team or the first chair of their orchestra, and helping them see that as a way that kind of advances them into those internships, having that success in those spaces, and then channeling it into their career opportunities. We're very lucky. We have a huge number of employers who are very excited to work with us. Our partnerships office is actually even growing those opportunities. We had the first of its kind partnership with the Bengals. We were the first official university of an NFL football team when we signed that agreement with the Bengals. But it's not just about being the Bengals university. It's also about the internship program that we're offering from that, the lectures that our friends at the Bengals are giving to our students about what they look for in employees, about how they identify leaders. Our work with the Cleveland Clinic is similar. They're looking not just for our scientists, but for our entrepreneurs. How are we thinking about applying the sciences into other ways that really have that human impact? And so there is this piece of Miami that's very, very special. I think it's really encapsulated in our love and honor tagline, which really is focused on this idea that everything you should be doing should be with the care for others. And so it's an important part of who we are, and it's embedded throughout the structure. I don't think you choose Miami as an employee or a faculty member, or honestly, even as a student, unless you're thinking about the impact you're going to make once you graduate.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So, you had talked about your alums. You had talked about that. I mean, phenomenal career path.
Yeah.
How do you engage? How do you keep alums engaged? And I'll kind of expand on that. So, oftentimes, you will see institutions that may send out a snail mail, direct mail piece, maybe with a
Yeah.
bumper sticker. Hey, sign up, for the alumni newsletter and donate.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
But how do you go beyond that to engage
Sure.
alums?
Yeah, so I will say our colleagues in the Alumni Association do a phenomenal job of keeping students as they transition to alumni engaged with them. So one of the things that they actually do that I love is they provide them a clip from graduation of them walking across the stage, an electronic transcript, and an electronic diploma. And those things seem very basic, but they come in a package wrapped around congratulations, celebration, and hey, we're now your Miami community, right? That's not an ask, it's a gift, right? It is very much forwarded as we want to stay connected to you. Tell us what you're up to next. And I do think we talk about time, talent, and treasure, and not just the treasure part of that equation when we are doing our friend raising. Because you can't do fundraising unless you've already built your friends through the pipeline. And so we've invested in a number of programs and services. We do an alumni weekend on campus in the summer where they can come back and live in their residence hall if they want to. I wouldn't do that, but lots of folks like to go back and have that moment of nostalgia. We invite folks to come to kind of mini university sessions, and where there are pockets of our alumni where the president and a faculty member or two will come back into a community and just say, hey, here's some things that are going on at the institution. We're so excited to have you back. We do a weekend away so alumni can come back for a reunion. This year it's in Savannah, Georgia. Last year it was in Austin, Texas. Really, again, going to where our alumni are, but also inviting them to hear about what's going on and keeping them engaged in that very kind of personal one-to-one kind of way. The communications that our alumni team send really are directed. We then funnel that back into however we can get folks to help. So when I think about it from an admission lens, we're always happy to see alumni join us on the road. So when we do our Red Brick Road Show, which is our out-of-state admitted student events, we invite young alumni to come into that space and talk about their Miami experience and how it channeled them to where they are. That's a really powerful moment because those alum are in the communities that these students are coming from. And often the question for a parent, if I'm in Washington, D.C., or I'm in St. Louis is, okay, great. They're going to go to Ohio and rural Ohio for 4 years. Can they actually come home and get a job? And what they see is a panel of alumni who are saying, I did just that. I chose Miami because of what I saw in that space. And I've come home to my community, or I've taken a little bit of a detour, but I came home with all of these skills that made me extraordinarily marketable in my local economy in a way that is really a tie back to I can see my student coming home, having that experience, having that really amazing 4 years, all encompassed, true college life experience, and coming back and getting a real job. They don't have to be in the city in order to get that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think I mean you've stressed and highlighted so many differentiators for Miami
Yeah.
University, especially when you look at a lot of the challenges that you see out there today, whether it be the cliff, which has impacted the country and especially the Northeast.
Yep.
And then in addition to that, I think you just alluded to questions around, that parents and prospective students have around what's the value of a degree and
Yep.
how do I avoid debt?
Yes.
So how would you speak to those two pieces?
Yeah. So, I think we are in a very fortunate position at Miami. We have over 250,000 living alumni who are represented across all sorts of industries, right? So our value proposition is pretty straightforward. Come to Miami and you'll see success. But it really has to do with this culture and environment that we create. And in partly, I think it's because we're in a small town, right? The city of Oxford is about 8,000 year-round residents. So when the university is in session, we almost triple the population of the city of Oxford. But that means that everything is really thought through as a way of helping our students to be successful while they're on campus. So, what are the conditions we're creating for community? How are we engaging them locally, right? There's almost no way to escape Miami students if you're in Oxford during the school year. So we really are thinking about, how are our students being good citizens, which again is building those skills as that are translated into any industry, right? They are really skills that community engagement, being a good citizen of your institution and of your local community allows you to do that, pick that up and translate it just about anywhere. And so I think as we continue on that idea of what is the value proposition, what is the return on investment of a Miami degree, it's about how they're growing as a person more than even what they're learning in the classroom. And it is so important. We have amazing faculty and amazing educators, and they're getting the experiences, but they're able to talk about that, right? It's not just about going to school and having an experience and then walking out the door and going, I'm not really sure what those 4 years were about. What they're able to say is, okay, here's how I grew from my incoming first year student's perspective to where I am as a graduating senior. And we see it in every story. Any student I talk to says, oh, yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing. I got here, I found a different path, I uncovered a different major, I uncovered an experience that kind of changed my entire trajectory. And it wouldn't have happened had I not been in this community of care over the course of the last 4 years. Um, so yeah, so I think it's this really interesting chemistry we have at Miami. And because of that, it continues to draw students, right? Our alumni send students to us. We have fifth, sixth, seventh generation Miamians in our community, but also folks who are the first in their family see that as an advantage. And so we really, we're in a unique space. We don't fit any of the descriptors. It's amazing how many times I get those, all of our colleagues across the spectrum who provide all of the research say, here are the profiles of typical colleges. And I'm like, okay, we're a little bit of that one, we're a little bit of that one. And there's something in that magic that says we're big enough to have all the opportunities and small enough to still be in a community that has helped us combat a lot of the things like the cliff, right? Where we're still drawing students. We're growing our market share in Ohio when we're seeing fewer and fewer high school graduates come in. And it's because of what they can get by being on our campus and experiencing our community.
Absolutely. Well, and when you can have alums be able to speak about their
Yeah.
experience and what they did, that goes such a long way.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to ask you to kind of take out your crystal ball and think about, okay, in the next 5 years, the next
Mhm.
10 years, where is Miami University going to be?
Yeah, this is probably my favorite what if, right? It's like what if on the
Well, yeah.
Marvel show, right? It's kind of what would happen if. And I love this. This is actually what gets me excited about my job is thinking about what are we doing today that's going to impact us 5 years down the road. And it's interesting. I've been in some conversations and internally, and I've said a number of times, I actually think Miami is where everyone else is going to want to be, right? A community that can prove what we're doing is working for our graduates, a place where students feel at home and comfortable and a part of a community, and where they're getting an outstanding education that has those real world durable skills embedded into it. And so it's funny because I think we're going to be an even better Miami in 5 years, and everybody else is going to be chasing that. It's going to be that kind of perfect size, perfect composition, perfect opportunity for students to have an experience for 4 years that takes them and launches them to their next. And so um, I would love to say we are extraordinarily stable in our enrollment and that our demand is really high and our applications are up and we're able to target and get the right students in our door to make sure that they're able to graduate right because we're not recruiting students, we're recruiting alumni. That's a really important facet of the work that we do is that we are really focused on saying, if you want to be here, we're going to give you the tools to be successful, but we want you to want to be here. I don't want you to say, oh, Miami was my backup. Miami was an option that I had and I couldn't go anywhere else. I want this to be a place that you actively choose. And then we're going to help you get through and get out and get the degrees or the experiences that you need to be successful when you graduate. And so for me, I do really think that in 5 years from now, we are going to be the model that other folks are following as they're really understanding kind of how the demographics and the students are changing as we kind of get out of this Gen Z and into the Gen Alpha enrollees.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, there's so many things going on that's so great at Miami University.
Yeah.
So, Rachel Beech, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate the thought leadership.
Happy to have the conversation today.